On a freezing February morning in 1934, a mansion rose above the Missouri hills like a misplaced European castle. Inside, behind brick and carved wood and Tiffany glass, a man was losing a battle he could not buy his way out of. His body had been failing for months: heart disease, swelling, pain that turned each hour into negotiation. He had carried a brewing empire through Prohibition. He had watched his family name become one of the most powerful brands in America. And yet, in that bedroom, none of it mattered. Just after 8 a.m., his chauffeur entered as he always did and switched on the radio, hoping music might soften the silence. A second later, a single gunshot shattered the room. Not celebration. Surrender. August Anheuser Busch Sr., president of the largest brewing company in America, had ended his life with a pearl-handled revolver. Beside him, a short note. Not a confession, not an explanation. Goodbye, precious mommy and adorable children. 2 words underlined. To understand why death echoed through that bedroom, you have to go back further than the mansion, further than Prohibition, back to a small German town in 1839. That year, a boy named Adolphus Busch was born into a family that understood trade and discipline. One of 22 children, raised to compete, raised to calculate. At 18, in 1857, he left Germany and sailed for America. He arrived in St. Louis at exactly the right time. The Mississippi River was the bloodstream of American commerce. German immigrants were reshaping the city's culture. Beer was local, fragile, perishable. Breweries lived and died within city limits. Adolphus didn't want a local business. He wanted scale. He began selling brewing supplies, hops, malt, equipment. It was an unglamorous angle, but it put him inside every brewery in town. That is how he met Eberhard Anheuser, who had taken over a struggling brewery. In 1861, Adolphus married Eberhard's daughter, Lily. It looked like romance. It was also strategy. After the Civil War, Adolphus entered the brewery and began transforming not just the product, but the distribution model. Most breweries were geographic prisoners. Adolphus engineered freedom. He embraced pasteurization. He invested in refrigerated rail cars. He turned beer into a national commodity. Then in 1876, he introduced Budweiser. Inspired by Bohemian lagers, but marketed as something bigger. Not a beer for kings, the king of beers. By 1901, Anheuser-Busch was the largest brewery in the United States. The immigrant had become industrial royalty. But men like Adolphus do not just want wealth. They want permanence. And permanence requires land. The land they chose was already famous. In the 1840s, a struggling army officer named Ulysses S Grant had farmed part of this property. He built a cabin called Hardscrabble. Crops failed, debt mounted. He sold firewood in St. Louis streets. He lost the land. Only later would he become a Union general, then president, then bankrupt again before finishing his memoirs. The soil carried both ambition and humiliation. In 1903, Adolphus purchased the southern portion of that land for his son, August Sr. Not as tribute, as territory. In 1910, construction began on a French Renaissance-style mansion. Red brick, massive scale, hunting scenes in stained glass, a gun room filled with trophies, more than 24 rooms designed for display. It was completed in 1913. Old world aristocracy, new world money. But in that same year, Adolphus died. August Sr. inherited not only the company, but the responsibility of protecting it in a country turning hostile to German heritage. Then came the real threat: Prohibition. The 18th Amendment was designed to kill breweries outright. Hundreds collapsed. August Sr. pivoted. Ice cream, malt syrup, yeast, refrigeration equipment. It was not glamorous. It was survival. And when Prohibition ended in 1933, Anheuser Busch was still standing. The machine had endured. But the cost was hidden. Scale brings fragility. By the 1930s, the company was massive, its payroll enormous, its distribution network intricate, its brand identity inseparable from its German roots, still politically sensitive. The family had also become visible, and visibility attracts risk. In 1930, August Sr.'s grandson was kidnapped and released after ransom. The message was clear: wealth does not protect. By the time beer flowed legally again in December 1933, August Sr. was physically collapsing. Pain, swelling, exhaustion. He had preserved the empire, but his body would not preserve him. On February 10, 1934, he ended his life inside the mansion built to symbolize endurance. The empire survived. The patriarch did not. Leadership passed eventually to August Busch Jr., known as Gussie. If his father was restraint, Gussie was spectacle. He understood something critical. Beer was no longer just a product. It was culture. He revived the Clydesdales as national icons. He purchased the St. Louis Cardinals in 1953. He opened Grant's Farm to the public in 1954. This was strategic genius. By inviting the public into the fantasy, he transformed wealth into civic identity. Anheuser Busch became untouchable. But charisma masks volatility. Personal tragedy struck repeatedly. His young daughter died in 1974. His marriage collapsed. His drinking intensified. Then the board, led in part by his own son, forced him out. For the first time, control left the patriarchal line not through death, but governance. The dynasty's structure had changed. Power was now corporate, not personal. The later generations carried wealth, but less insulation. Legal incidents, fatal accidents, settlements without prison time, public scrutiny intensifying in a media-saturated era. Meanwhile, the industry itself was changing. Global consolidation, international competition, rising debt loads. By 2008, when InBev launched its takeover bid, the company was powerful, but no longer structurally independent enough to resist. The board accepted. For over a century, Anheuser Busch had been family-controlled. With one vote, that era ended. The brand remained. The dynasty did not. Grant's farm still stands. Visitors feed goats. They photograph Clydesdales. They walk past Hardscrabble's cabin. A struggling farmer once failed here. An immigrant built an empire here. A president went bankrupt here. A brewery dynasty rose and fractured here. The estate absorbs all of it. That is the pattern. American dynasties often begin with innovation and risk. They expand through engineering and branding. They consolidate through spectacle. They strain under scale. And eventually, ownership separates from identity. The mansion was built to anchor a name to the land. Instead, it became proof that permanence is an illusion. The gates still open. The horses still parade. But inside the big house, history lingers. Not as legend, as echo. And if you listen closely, you can still hear that gunshot. the moment when wealth met its limit, and a dynasty learned what even empires cannot buy: relief from being human.